Hello, good evening. You're watching London Live News at 6 with James Dickman. Coming up tonight, after consultation with those affected, a special memorial garden is looking like the likeliest tribute to go in place of the Grenfell Tower to honour those who lost their lives in the tragedy. The bank branch of the Northern Line finally reopens months after closing for an upgrade at Bank Station itself. We'll hear from the Mayor, who was there to open it. We'll have an update on London's weather as well in the next 10 minutes, also on the way this evening. Arsenal need a crucial win tonight against Newcastle if they're to beat Spurs to 4th spot for Champions League qualification. We'll hear from their manager and get analysis from the weekend's action, including a word on Mark Noble's farewell to Hammers fans on Sunday and what was his final home game after 18 senior years at the club. And some music from mega country music star Eric Paslay ahead of a date at the London Palladium. All of that on the way, but first let's just have a rundown of some of the main headlines from today. A memorial garden could be built on the site of Grenfell Tower to honour the 72 people who died in the fire. The Grenfell Tower Memorial Commission said it was engaging with survivors, the bereaved and local residents about ideas, and so far the garden was the most popular idea from those consulted. The fire destroyed the 24-storey tower in North Kensington on the 14th of June 2017. A police community support officer who told a woman involved in a harassment case that he knew where she lived and has been jailed. Met Police PCSO Mohammed Zaman was off duty when he met the woman in a supermarket on the 24th of March last year. Westminster Magistrates Court heard that when Zaman was arrested in a police interview, he branded the woman a liar, working class and chavvy. The 28-year-old from Hounslow has been given a 20-week jail sentence. Police are investigating a social media video which appears to show an officer repeatedly hitting a man while he was being detained in East London. These are some stills from the footage that surfaced online. It shows several officers standing beside a police van outside Kingsland Shopping Centre on Saturday. It shows several officers standing beside a police van outside Kingsland Shopping Centre on Saturday. A man who is being held by officers is seen struggling before he's struck in the head 5 times whilst on the floor. The bank branch of the Northern Line has fully reopened today following its closure for upgrade works at Bank Station. The Mayor of London, Sadiq, was there, back from his tour of the US to reopen the branch following its 17-week closure. A brand new Northern Line tunnel and passenger concourse was built as well. As a wider southbound platform, Bank will see its capacity increased by 40% when upgrade work finishes later this year, with improvements still to come.
The key thing we've got to do as we are, get to the real key stage of our recovery is to make sure we encourage office workers back to the office. We encourage international tourists back. One of the ways we're going to do that is by making the offer a good one, enticing people back, making the commute from home to the office a good one, making sure there's space to keep your social distance. Just over the course of the next few days, we're going to see Bank Station reopening today. The Jubilee Line night tube opens on Friday, adding to the Central Line and the Victoria Line. And next week, of course, we have the Elizabeth Line opening. That's going to increase by more than 10% the capacity of public transport in central London. It's really important we support the recovery. One way of doing so is by this investment in our public transport. Vital upgrades have taken place. We've got wider platforms, much improved concourse for customers. Later on this year, we'll be seeing new escalators, step-free access, a better entrance on the surface. This is one of the most complicated underground stations in the world, and it's really good to see the improvements because of our investment.
Sadiq there. Now, the government is poised to introduce legislation that would allow ministers in London to override parts of the Brexit deal on Northern Ireland. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is expected to make a statement tomorrow. Prime Minister Boris Johnson arrived in Northern Ireland earlier to encourage the return of the devolved government. Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Coveney warned that if Britain goes it alone in pulling out of the protocol, that could endanger its wider Brexit trade deal with the EU. Urban centres around the world, including London, are increasingly in danger of running out of fresh water. That's according to Christian Aid, who say the impact of climate change on cities will become more acute as more people live in them, partly driven by the climate crisis itself as it eats up coastlines and livelihoods. While the international development charity's new report warned that water can be a trigger, a weapon and a casualty of conflict, citing Ukraine's diversion of water supply to Crimea after Russia annexed it in 2014. Well, 55% of the global population live in cities, with that thought to grow to 68% by 2050. Now to football, and for two of the capital's biggest rivals, the race for the all-important fourth spot in the Premier League to get Champions League football is hotting up. A win for Spurs over Burnley on the weekend puts Tottenham 2 points clear of the Gunners, who need no less than a win against Newcastle this evening to claim that spot back, with just one match to go next weekend. Well, Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta has been speaking ahead of the game.
I said after the press conference, I just looked forward. That game was lost, we were disappointed, but we didn't have any time to recover, and we have a huge game to play on Monday against Newcastle, and the full focus and energy was just on that.
Antonio Conte said after the game that he felt you were a good manager, but felt you should complain a bit less and concentrate on your team. What would you say to that?
That I'm fully focused on Newcastle. They stand under any difficulty, how much they are looking forward to play on Monday, how excited they are about the challenge ahead, because we all know everything that we've been through throughout the season and how much we have to fight to be in this position.
And what did you sense in terms of the confidence levels since that defeat and now ahead of Newcastle?
And that was a possibility, and that we knew that to get in the position we are today, a lot has happened in the past, and we've been through it, we have experienced it, and hopefully that can help us again on Monday.
More on that and all of the action concerning the London clubs from the weekend just gone with our football man Doogie Critchley after the break. Just one more headline before the weather. Visitors to this year's RHS Chelsea Flower Show will get an insight into how London's firefighters respond to flooding incidents and the difference a garden can make. For the first time, London Fire Brigade will be exhibiting at the event, which takes place next week. The brigade's Act on Flooding stand, which will be at the Great Pavilion Discovery Zone, has been designed to highlight the issues of flooding in urban areas and will feature a tank with a fully submerged car to show the worst-case scenario flooding incidents firefighters could be faced with. Let's take a look at the weather now. Around 13 degrees overnight tonight, staying dry as well. Tomorrow it should be dry and fine too, with plenty of sunshine in the morning. Patchy cloud building in the afternoon though. A warmer day though, nearly reaching 26 degrees it looks like. Wednesday a similar day, but some showers building late into the evening after a long bright stretch in the day. Thursday, more of the same. Just one headline to bring you before the break. Take a look at this. London Zoo's pygmy goats are showing fundraisers just how it's done as they prepare to take on the zoo's new Around the World in 30 Days challenge. Kicking off on the 1st of June, it will see participants set a distance they'd like to cover across 30 days and collectively aim to travel 40,075 kilometres, equal to the circumference of the globe. The herd of 5 goats' chosen route will see them trotting past Bactrian camels, Humboldt penguins, flamingos and llamas. Participants will raise as much money as possible for global conservation charity ZSL, taking on their challenge of choice by running, walking, trotting, wheeling or cycling, turning daily exercise into fundraising. We're taking a short break now, but in just a few short minutes. Today marks the beginning of Road Safety Week. We'll hear some startling statistics concerning London's motorists and cyclists.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. Welcome back onto some of the day's other main headlines affecting Londoners. The energy price cap could soon be reviewed every 3 months under plans announced by the industry regulator. The mechanism determines gas and electricity bills for 22 million households in the UK. Ofgem have put the idea out, saying twice yearly arrangement in April and October, which is currently in place, has contributed to the failing of suppliers. Households were forced to swallow unprecedented rises in one go this April, with the average bill rising by 54%. from around £700 to roughly £2,000. More than half of people in the UK say they have worse health due to the rising cost of living, with medics reporting some patients cannot afford to look after themselves. A YouGov poll found 55% felt their health had got worse owing issues to such as high health costs and soaring food bills. 1 in 4 of these people have been told this is the case by a doctor or other medical professionals, with stress seen as a driving factor of ill health. And Greenpeace have begun a new campaign urging people to get involved in the Big Plastic Count. The count, a collaboration between Everyday Plastic and Greenpeace UK, will see people recording the different types of packaging waste they throw away and submit their results. Well, Chris Packham starred in their campaign video.
You see, currently there's nowhere near enough evidence about how much plastic is used in UK households or about where it goes. But together we can take part in the Big Plastic Count, the UK's biggest ever investigation into household plastic. It's time to collect the evidence we need to uncover the truth about the plastic we use and where it goes. And we can use these results to urge the government to tackle the plastic crisis once and for all. So please sign up today and make the Big Plastic Count as big as possible.
Time for the football now, and the penultimate weekend in the Premier League did not disappoint. For Arsenal and Spurs, it's all about the race for 4th spot as we head into the final week, with the Gunners travelling to Newcastle tonight, desperately in need of a win. The weekend also saw Mr West Ham, Mark Noble, bid a final farewell to Hammers fans in what was an emotional day at the London Stadium. Well, joining me now with some analysis to go over all of that and more is Doogie Critchley from Football Daily. Doogie, thank you very much for coming on today. Firstly, that start with Mr West Ham himself, Mark Noble. He was at the club for 22 years. He joined when he was 11 years old, and he had his final game in front of home support at the London Stadium on the weekend after well over 500 games, I should say, at the club. Quite something.
Yeah, an absolutely incredible achievement, and one that I don't think will be repeated by too many players going into the future now. He's been incredibly consistent throughout most of his time there. He's only sort of dropped out of the team in the last few years as Declan Rice and Thomas Souček have formed an excellent midfield duo. But yeah, he's been really consistent across that time. He's West Ham's 2nd top scorer in Premier League history. He's their top assist provider as well. He's played the most games for them. I mean, he's played more games than the likes of Gary Neville in the Premier League, Ashley Cole, Joe Cole, legends of the game. And while he might not have the same standing as some of those players, never capped for England, of course, but yeah, capped regularly for the England under-21 side. He's been a magnificent servant to West Ham, and so crucial to creating that team spirit that has really carried them through these last few years in their journey from sort of 19th when David Moyes took over to the edge of a Europa League final and a potential Europa League finish this year.
Yeah, he's quite an icon at the club because he really sort of represents the heart and soul of what West Ham are all about, and without him, there's a worry you could lose that perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he stayed loyal as well in difficult periods. I think his first year playing regularly for West Ham was in the Championship. He also stayed loyal when you dropped down to the Championship at that point. And I think he would have had offers from other clubs at various points. Maybe not a top 4 club, but definitely upper reaches of the Premier League. So, yeah, he's been imperative to West Ham, and that morale, as I say, that has really carried them through this period, that has seen them sort of re-establish themselves as one of England's top clubs, moving away from Upton Park as well, and you know, easing through that transition to the Olympic Stadium, or the former Olympic Stadium.
Yeah, and the final game for him wasn't a bad send-off result-wise, getting what could be the champions, Manchester City, holding them to a 2-2 draw. What could that mean? Not just for the title race in terms of Liverpool and Manchester City, but also could help West Ham potentially get that 6th spot in the Europa League places.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still very much on. They're 2 points off Man United. They play Brighton next weekend, whereas Man United travel to Crystal Palace, who are gunning for a top 10 finish under Patrick Vieira to complete an excellent season for them. So, yeah, a Europa League spot not so out of the question for West Ham at all, and you wouldn't really know what to predict from Man United this season at all. Even in the last few weeks, it's been so inconsistent. But in terms of this game, excellent start, particularly from West Ham. I thought they dominated that first half. Haven't seen Man City play so poorly really for 45 minutes in the Premier League for quite some time, and they forced them into a number of mistakes. Jarrod Bowen continuing his excellent season. He's now got 18 goals and 13 assists, in 50 games this year. He's got goals against Chelsea, Arsenal. He's got 2 versus Lyon, and he's now got a brace against Man City. So he's really stepped up this year. For Man City, they're now 4 points ahead of Liverpool. Liverpool play Southampton tomorrow night, but Man City know that if they beat Aston Villa at home next weekend, they will be crowned champions. They haven't lost to them since 2013, and they won 8 straight games against them. So Man City firmly in the driving seat.
Yeah, and of course, Liverpool legend Steven Gerrard at the helm for Aston Villa. He could provide a really big banana skin for Manchester City. Well, moving on to the 4th spot between the big race between Arsenal and Spurs. Arsenal head to Newcastle this evening, needing a win, no less than a win, to claim it back off Spurs after sort of nabbing a victory at Burnley on the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, but Spurs' performances have been a little bit up and down, but having, got that massive win against Arsenal last Thursday, they just needed a result from this one against Burnley. They didn't play at their best for that crucial 1-0 win sealed from a Harry Kane penalty, who must be one of the best penalty takers in the world. He's just so consistent from the spot. But yeah, in terms of Arsenal, I think most Arsenal fans would have taken this scenario at the start of the season, but having had that that little point gap to Spurs ahead of the North London derby, they'll be a little bit worried now that they're 2 points behind. But they do have a good record at St James's Park. They won 7 of the last 8 games there. And if they can seal 4th spot, having missed Kieran Tierney and Thomas Partey for the last 6 weeks or so, that would be a massive, massive achievement, having finished 8th in back-to-back seasons. So this has got a lot but riding on it for both teams as well. Spurs, you feel like unless they seal Champions League football, Antonio Conte might walk away, which would probably potentially mean the departure of Harry Kane as well. So this feels like an absolutely enormous week in North London.
How do you think it's going to fare this evening? Who would you put your money on to get into the Champions League?
Well, I have a bit of a reputation amongst the Football Daily faithful for making terrible predictions, so I'm a little bit nervous ahead of saying this. But yeah, I think Arsenal will get the job done tonight. Everton on the final day, hopefully Everton have their Premier League safety secured for another year, I should say. But after that disappointing loss to Brentford yesterday, it's still pretty tight down there. But I think Arsenal will get over the line today. As I say, they've got a great record at St James's Park, but yeah, it will just be absolutely enormous to overturn this Spurs side. They finished behind them for the last 5 straight seasons. And to secure Champions League football ahead of their summer plans to rejuvenate their forward line, bring in a star striker, potentially more depth across midfield and maybe at left back as well, Champions League football is going to be absolutely imperative for them.
Dougie, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Dougie Critchley from Football Daily, taking us through what could be a very exciting end to the Premier League season for some of the London clubs. Now, London has the lowest number of reported injuries for drivers involved in a road traffic accident, according to new research. Well, to mark Road Safety Week, which begins today, the law firm SLATER and Gordon have released new data on the number and severity of road traffic accidents in London and how safe the capital is for its cyclists. Well, earlier, Helena spoke to Matt Jarvis from the firm about where in London is the most dangerous for road users and what to do if you're involved in an accident.
Well, the research shows that London is part of the UK that has the most road traffic accidents that lead to injury. However, those injuries tend to be less severe. If you take somewhere like Scotland, for example, they have less accidents, but a higher percentage of more serious injuries. And we think the reasons for that are London obviously has a lot more congestion. It has a lot more of sort of roads that are 20 and 30 mile an hour speed limits, whereas somewhere like Scotland, Wales, more rural areas have more A roads, tend to have more open roads, higher speed limits, resulting in sort of higher speed accidents, which then result in more serious injuries. So London and Westminster, which came at number 1 in terms of the number of accidents, or having the most number of accidents within that time frame that we looked at, did have a considerable sort of number of accidents compared to somewhere which is more rural. However, obviously those accidents were less severe.
you are using the release of this data to remind users what to do if they are involved in a road traffic accident themselves. So what should people do if they are?
If you're unfortunately involved in an accident, the most important thing is just to make sure you're safe. Now, obviously, if you're involved in an accident on a busy road, on a high-speed road such as a motorway, the most important thing is, if you can, is get onto the grass verge away from any sort of other vehicles which may be travelling at speed. If it's a less sort of serious accident and you're able to sort of make sure that everyone's okay, and obviously you will be I'm sure having quite a sort of shock to the accident as anyone would. If you can sort of ring the emergency services if required, contact your insurance company is really, really important, and also take photographs and exchange details with the other party. I think that's, if that is possible, that's really important.
Absolutely. Well, finally, where can our viewers go to find out more information if needed?
So more information at slatergordon.co.uk.
There you go. You're watching London Live News with James Dickman. A reminder of our top story is coming up after the break. Plus, nearly half of young Londoners of black heritage believe their race is hindering them in job applications, though there is good news as well. We'll hear from the company behind the research looking into the issue on diversity in the workplace.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Let's have a reminder of some of our main stories from today. A memorial garden could be built on the site of Grenfell Tower to honour the 72 people who died in the fire. The Grenfell Tower Memorial Commission said it was engaging with survivors, the bereaved and local residents about ideas, and so far the garden was the most popular idea from those consulted. The fire destroyed the 24-storey tower in North Kensington on the 14th of June 2017. A police community support officer who told a woman involved in a harassment case that he knew where she lived and has been jailed. Met Police PCSO Mohammed Zaman was off duty when he met the woman in a supermarket on the 24th of March last year. Westminster Magistrates Court heard that when Zaman was arrested in a police interview, he branded the woman a liar, working class and chavvy. The 28-year-old from Hounslow has been given a 20-week jail sentence. Police are investigating a social media video which appears to show an officer repeatedly hitting a man while he was being detained in East London. These are some stills from the footage that surfaced online. It shows several officers standing beside a police van outside Kingsland Shopping Centre on Saturday. It shows several officers standing beside a police van outside Kingsland Shopping Centre on Saturday. A man who is being held by officers is seen struggling before he's struck in the head 5 times whilst on the floor. The bank branch of the Northern Line has fully reopened today following its closure for upgrade works at Bank Station. The Mayor of London, Sadiq was there, back from his tour of the US to reopen the branch following its 17-week closure. A brand new Northern Line tunnel and passenger concourse was built as well. As a wider southbound platform, Bank will see its capacity increased by 40% when upgrade work finishes later this year, with improvements still to come.
The key thing we've got to do as we are, get to the real key stage of our recovery is to make sure we encourage office workers back to the office. We encourage international tourists back. One of the ways we're going to do that is by making the offer a good one, enticing people back, making the commute from home to the office a good one, making sure there is space to keep the social distance. Just over the course of the next few days, we're going to see Bank Station reopening today. The Jubilee Line night tube opens on Friday, adding to the Central Line and the Victoria Line. And next week, of course, we have the Elizabeth Line opening. That's going to increase by more than 10% the capacity of public transport in central London.
Sadiq Khan there. Now, the government is poised to introduce legislation that would allow ministers in London to override parts of the Brexit deal on Northern Ireland. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is expected to make a statement tomorrow. Prime Minister Boris Johnson arrived in Northern Ireland earlier to encourage the return of the devolved government. Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Coveney warned that if Britain goes it alone in pulling out of the protocol, that could endanger its wider Brexit trade deal with the EU. Now to football, and for 2 of the capital's biggest rivals, the race for the all-important 4th spot in the Premier League to get Champions League football is hotting up. A win for Spurs over Burnley on the weekend puts Tottenham 2 points clear of the Gunners, who need no less than a win against Newcastle this evening to claim that spot back, with just 1 match to go next weekend. Well, Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta has been speaking ahead of the game.
I said after the press conference, I just looked forward. That game was lost. We were disappointed, but we didn't have any time to recover, and we have a huge game to play on Monday against Newcastle, and the full focus and energy was just on that.
Take a look at this. London Zoo's Pygmy Goats are showing fundraisers just how it's done as they prepare to take on the zoo's new Around the World in 30 Days challenge. Kicking off on the 1st of June, it will see participants set a distance they'd like to cover across 30 days and collectively aim to travel 40,075 kilometres, equal to the circumference of the globe. The herd of 5 goats' chosen route will see them trotting past Bactrian camels, Humboldt penguins, flamingos and llamas. Now, new research from an inclusive recruitment company suggests that there is a continued perception of race inequality in the workplace.
Bright Network's study found 43% of Black heritage students say that their background has hindered them in job applications, and almost a quarter are worried about face-to-face interviews. Well, Shelly from the organisation joined me to talk about the issue and whether or not things have and are changing for the better in recent years.
At Bright Network, each year we kind of go out to our kind of network of students and graduates to understand their what do they want from their future careers. And really interestingly, just kind of 12 months ago, Black heritage graduates had the highest levels of anxiety about their future career prospects. But now we find that Black heritage university students feel far more confident than their white counterparts about their career prospects. So over 2/3, about kind of 60 to 70% of Black heritage students are confident about securing a job, compared with just 44% of white students. And while that's fantastic, it's something that we as an organisation are very much kind of set up to promote and drive in terms of social mobility and increasing opportunities for students regardless of background. It's something that we can't get too complacent about, because we're still seeing that in the same research, 2 in 5, so just under half of Black heritage students are telling us that they feel their background has been hindered or has hindered them, in job applications. So while it's fantastic to see that many more students of these kind of backgrounds are feeling more confident, there is still lots of work to be done.
Yeah, has a lot of your research, or particularly from any anecdotal evidence, seen that in terms of each industry there's a big disparity? There are some industries that are perhaps a lot better with this sort of thing, perhaps media or creative industries, and there might be some other industries that are lacking, perhaps maybe in finance, the property sector, in terms of fulfilling a sort of diverse workforce.
Absolutely. So we actually looked at the kind of perceptions and kind of students' choice of sectors, and we've noticed that this year versus last year, the sectors that have grown in popularity are those kind of more creative fields like media, marketing, PR, technology, which is very kind of clear to understand, and public sector, whereas those kind of traditional city careers like law, banking, finance have kind of dropped in popularity. And this is directly linked to how we also kind of asked respondents to rate on a scale how inclusive they feel that these sectors are. And right at the top in terms of the least inclusive are those same kind of city, traditional city sectors.
Yeah. You also found in your research that nearly a quarter of people said that they were worried about face-to-face interviews if they were from a Black heritage. Is that anxiety misplaced, or is it something that is a real problem still?
Absolutely. I think when we specifically drove into where different student groups are feeling particularly worried about the application process, across the board, face-to-face interviews have come up as kind of one of the key areas that across the board students are feeling and graduates are feeling worried about. However, for Black heritage students in particular, they're 38% more likely to be worried about psychometric tests as part of the application process. Now, this is particularly an area of the process that is quite commonly difficult to access practice tests to, and can also quite commonly not be very cheap or kind of easily accessible. So however, it's one that we continue to see part of the application processes. So some work here needs to happen to, first of all, evaluate if it's something that is really assessing what is needed for those roles that they're going for, and also how we can support those student groups to access those kind of supportive materials to make sure that they have all the tools for success and they're not being hindered because it's something that they've not faced before, for example.
Yeah, just expound for our viewers what you mean by those psychometric tests exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So psychometric tests are ultimately assessing different things like logical reasoning, numerical reasoning. And so they'll ask different questions to kind of problem solve, so for example, a kind of numerical focused problem. So it could be kind of a series of shapes that they need to kind of work out what the next shape in that sequence would be. And it's really just analysing the way that people think to understand if it aligns with the firm. But for a lot of members and a lot of students across the nation, this is something that is very hard to understand what it is an employer is actually looking for in those processes.
Yeah. And finally, would you say that London is perhaps leading the way in terms of making sure that places where we work are the most diverse in the country and is kind of, hesitate to use the word, but the most sort of woke place in sort of driving that forward?
Absolutely. So I think as such a in my opinion, as such a multicultural city, it is really the hub in terms of a lot of the fantastic diversity and inclusion initiatives that we're seeing. A lot of the firms in London are really driving this forward. However, while all of this fantastic work is really positive to see, and across all sectors, they are kind of ramping up their efforts to reach and appeal students from underrepresented groups. It is that kind of building that confidence, and that what we've seen in terms of the research that's come out this year, that is only kind of part of the way to kind of really closing that black pay gap and the black recruitment gap. Employers still need to be doing more to work to make their processes more inclusive overall. So while London is a fantastic kind of example of that, and the kind of reflecting in the world of work, the multiculturalism that we see across across London, I think there is still lots of work to be done. And a bit of research that highlights this as well is that 2/3 of Black heritage females and more than half of the Black heritage males that we kind of interviewed still don't feel that the workplace is welcoming to everybody. So just highlights there the need for more work to be done.
Shelly there from the Bright Network. Now, stay with us for our final part. We'll have some music with the US country singer Eric Paslay joining us to talk about his UK tour, stopping off here in the capital.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to our final part this evening. Now, the US country singer Eric Paslay has begun a 25-night tour of the UK, ending with a gig at London's Palladium. Paslay has enjoyed a list of #1 hits in the States, a Grammy nomination, and has just released his latest studio album. We'll hear from Eric in a moment, but first, here's a taste of his sound. This is The Driver.
Bringing the circus to town, first one in and the last rolling out, shutting down the up-all-nighter.
Yeah, it's a greatest hits. It's like, we were joking, it's like, here's an album guaranteed to have 5 #1s on it, you know. And I had the option to re-record some of these songs that I had, like my own hits, Friday Night, She Don't Love You, songs that I had with Universal Records. So it was like, hey, pull a Taylor Swift, I can own some of my own recordings, you know. But I didn't want to like do the Taylor version. We didn't completely copy them. I wanted to reimagine them. And so we did that. And then it was the thought of, well, I play my hits that I've written for other people every night. So wanted to do an actual studio version of like Barefoot Blue Jean Night, Even If It Breaks Your Heart, Rewind, Angel Eyes. And then a song I did with Charles Kelly and Dierks Bentley a few years back. We were nominated for a Grammy for group performance. So I love the song.
It's interesting. The country scene in the UK is rapidly growing, and it has been huge for some time now. But for those who perhaps aren't that embedded in that scene, which song from the album would you recommend?
I mean, in the country music scene of what I do, listen to Even If It Breaks Your Heart. You know, I believe everybody has a cool dream that they're reaching for. You know, they might hide it from others because it might be crazy, you know, and if you're a kid, your parents might think you're not going to make money at it. But, I don't believe money is happiness ultimately. Yeah, I think Even If It Breaks Your Heart, it's kind of a lot of my story growing up, and and it's a big song. I mean, Barefoot Blue Jean Night's the most played song of the decade in the States, a country song. So that's a big country song over in the States. But yeah, today I would say Even If It Breaks Your Heart. Give me another day, I might say another song off the record.
You're on tour at the moment with the Shires, who have kind of stormed the music scene for the UK when it comes to promoting country. Mm-hmm. You guys have got a good connection. You've worked together before, have you?
We have, yeah. We actually met in Australia at the C2C festival years back, and which is crazy. Like, I think Chrissy or Ben reminded me of it. Like, man, we met in Australia, you know? And so here we are. I mean, I've been touring over here in Europe for about 5 years now. And, this is a dream tour. It's like, if you want to get, be around the most country fans, like, open for the Shires. And it's like, we're doing it finally 2 years later of planning it. And they're so good. Like, they're so good. I was telling Ben and Chrissy, it's like, y'all should win Duo of the Year in the States. Like, you're so good.
It's a good job that you get on, because you've got a lot of dates on this tour, haven't you? It's a big tour. You'll be in London towards the end of it in May. It's been a while, I imagine, since you've been in London because of what we've gone through. But what is the London audience like in terms of how they approach, the big stars coming over from the US, Grammy-nominated stars like yourself?
Yeah, I love touring over here. It's and even in the States, it's like around the world, we're all taught how to listen. Like, how does your community listen to music? Like where I'm from in Texas, you stand like this, watching the guy on stage. I've had guys stare at me the whole time, and they're like, "Hey man, you changed my life. Thanks for that." And you're like, "I thought you were gonna kill me after the show. Thank you, Cecil." But it's and there's just certain ways that people listen, and you have to understand they love what you're doing right now and how they listen. But I will say, there's no doubt when I come to Europe, people love what I'm doing. It's just like right now we're playing all these theaters in amazing rooms, and it's just the crowds have been amazing.
I want to touch on the digital art aspect of the new album as well, NFTs. So something which is creating quite a bit of noise in London at the moment, NFTs. Lots of people starting to work out, get their heads around this. Why did you feel you wanted to kind of add that, digital ownership, digital art aspect to your new work?
I always love reaching forward. There's always something new coming, and a lot of times, you know, old men around tables are like, it's just a phase. The interweb's just a phase. It ain't gonna, you know, and you're like, you missed the boat and now music's worth nothing. But that's a whole deep discussion. But I just thought, man, what is this? Everyone's confused about it. I want to know about it. It's like, how does this work? And, you know, I'm kind of viewing the NFT world as just like our first one that I did. There's a photo my brother and I took together at my farm, this cool orb and a guitar in the middle, floating in the middle of one of my hay fields. And it's like, this is a golden ticket. Here's $25 ticket for endless shows, like endless things. Like, I'm going to do a show over here for the crew. I did a hang back in the States. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll just hop on. I'm in the top of the tower in Brighton. You know, I don't know. It's to me, it's the Willy Wonka golden ticket of it's never ending. And then the second drop I built 10 lights. I love building things, renovating things, creating stuff out of old things. And I built 10 pretty identical lights, and we called it Light Out of Darkness, just from what everyone's been through. And you built the base out of a black walnut tree that fell. We were hit by a tornado in Nashville. And so I tried to, you know, make lemons. They make lemonade out of lemons, as we say back in the States. But it's did that, auctioned those off, but I also gave one of those away to the first 100. Make sure the never-ending value. And then right now going on, even whenever this airs, I guarantee it's still going on. I'm auctioning off 10% of this album. Basically the attorneys don't know what's happening. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I don't know. Other artists in the pop and dance, you know, DJ world have been doing it, and I'm like, well, why not be the first country artist to do it? So I am, and we've been auctioning off 1% at a time. So there'll be 1% ownerships auctioned off, and so I get to share this album with 10 other people, or like one guy from Zimbabwe or something cool, you know. I don't know.
Singing, oh, easy come, easy go. Yeah, we rocked and we roll out of town.
Eric is on tour with the Shires now, and he'll be at the Palladium in London on the 24th of this month. Now, it went from a book to a film, and now a series is launching. The Time Traveller's Wife seems to be a timeless tale. It tells the intricate story of Claire and Henry, who are married and are struggling with a problem most couples would never have to think about: time travel. The series stars Rosie Leslie, known for her role in Game of Thrones. Let's have a look at what she has to say about starring as Claire. First, let's have a little bit of the trailer.
There's an element of trepidation coming from me, simply because obviously it's a very beloved book, but I feel phenomenally confident and also proud in the adaptation that Stephen Moffat has produced, and the collaboration with David Nutter as well being stupendous, that hopefully as a result we have been able to execute a faithful version of the book, and that it's an enjoyable experience to watch. So I also played younger as well. I was like a 16-year-old version of myself, so that was really enjoyable. But the older version of me, actually my mum is here tonight, and so I look quite a lot like mum. So when I did see myself with the prosthetics on, there was an element of like, okay, I now know what I'm going to look like. That's fun. It's my mum.
Well, that series, The Time Traveller's Wife, is out now. Let's just take one final look at the weather before we leave you. Around 13 degrees overnight at its lowest, staying dry as well. Tomorrow should be dry and fine, with plenty of sunshine in the morning. Patchy cloud might build in the afternoon. A warmer day. Wednesday, a similar day, but some showers building late into the evening after a long, bright stretch. Thursday, more of the same. That's it from us this evening. Do join us again at the same time. But for now, good evening.